think one of the most stunning things about what's going on in venture capital investment right now is that female founders, female-led companies, while they make up about 5% of the deals that venture capitalists do, they're only raising about 2% of the dollars. And that doesn't make any sense. Women are half the population. In this country, they own over a third of all privately owned businesses, but they're only 2% of venture capital dollars. That gets a little bit better when you talk about women entrepreneurs who are in teams with male entrepreneurs, right? About 17% of venture deals go to companies with at least one woman on the founding team, but they're only getting 10% of the venture capital dollars. 90% of venture capital investment is going to all male-led companies. Now, this begs the question, why? Nobody wants to default to, well, it's gender bias, we're in a male world, men want to control the money and they continue to control the money. Nobody wants to say that. So we all look at different elements. One question, are women starting businesses at the same rate as men? Well, the answer is no. We know that only about a third, about 36% of privately owned companies are majority-owned women. But when we look at different studies where they look at an entire pool of potential founders, we see that women are 17% of, say, the TechCrunch Disrupt event in New York. And women are 20% of the folks applying for venture capital in a study done out of Sweden. So we see much higher than 5% or 2% of women are applying. So women are getting money at a lower rate and they're getting less money. So one question is there a problem because there aren't a lot of women in the venture capital industry? And that could definitely be part of the problem. And the truth of the matter is venture capital is a very male industry. Only about 18% of investment professionals in venture capital are female, and over 50% of the top 100 venture capital firms have no female partners whatsoever. They're all male investment teams. But there is good news on this front, because what has been shown is that the venture capital firms that women are launching, and last year, women launched about 20% of the micro VCs, the early stage VCs, and the angel funds in the US. Women launched venture capital firms invest in a much higher percentage of women entrepreneurs. And male venture firms, male established venture firms that have multiple women partners are also seen to invest in much higher than industry standard numbers of women entrepreneurs. There are other problems here. Women investors, like male investors, see women entrepreneurs differently than they see male entrepreneurs. They tend to judge male entrepreneurs on potential and women entrepreneurs on past performance, which is very, very difficult if you're a first-time entrepreneur. And we see this in the language they use to describe women entrepreneurs. They'll describe a young male entrepreneur as inexperienced but very ambitious. They'll describe a female entrepreneur as inexperienced and risky. Or they'll describe a male entrepreneur as having great industry experience and very capable, and they'll describe a woman entrepreneur as having great industry experience but being uncertain. So they describe them differently. There's studies that show that when the same venture is pitched by a man or pitched by a woman, it's far more likely to be invested in when it's pitched by a man. And that doesn't matter whether the investor is a man or a woman. And finally, venture capitalists actually interview women entrepreneurs differently. When they talk to male entrepreneurs, they talk about the opportunity, the upside. What are you going to do to capture market share? How big can this really be? Opportunity-oriented questioning. But when they talk to women entrepreneurs, it's more defensive questioning. How will you preserve market share against competitors? How quickly can you become cash flow positive? What's the downside of this business? So they force them by their very questions into talking about not the success of the venture, but the potential failure of the venture. It begs the question, does it matter? Should venture capitalists be investing in more female founders? Well, logically, if you're in an industry looking for innovation, ignoring half the population makes no sense. But there's also additional evidence. Evidence shows that women entrepreneurs are more efficient with the capital they're given. They're more likely to reach cash flow positive and have lower failure rates. First Round Capital, a very successful venture capital organization, did a study of their 10 years in business and looked at over 300 portfolio companies and over 600 founders. And they found that the teams they had invested in that had at least one woman on the founding team outperformed their male counterparts by 63%. Look, women only get 2% of venture capital dollars, but 6% of the biggest successes, the unicorns, were founded by women. Household names like 23andMe and House, and even the fantasy sports site FanDuel were co-founded or founded by women. Given results like this, it might make sense to invest in female entrepreneurs. So what can venture capitalists do? I would recommend that venture capitalists follow something developed in the NFL called the Rooney Rule. Art Rooney of the Pittsburgh Steelers, seeing two very qualified African-American head coaches fired even though they had winning records, suggested that the NFL needed to pay more attention to diversity in its head coach hiring practice. And what he instituted was the practice of you must interview at least one minority candidate for every opening. Didn't mandate you had to hire them, but you had to find an African-American candidate who was qualified and interview them. And the rate of hiring of African-American candidates went up tremendously. Venture capitalists need to find women entrepreneurs to interview. You don't have to lower your standards in investment, but you have to broaden the pool that you draw from. And if you want those women entrepreneurs to succeed, you should have a woman on your investment team. The kinds of exits that venture capitalists look for, exits through IPO or acquisition, women entrepreneurs who are venture-backed exit like that only 17% of the time, as compared to their male counterparts who exit like that 27% of the time. But there's good news here. When there's a woman on the investment team who can help vet the deals and coach the deals, that difference in high-end exits disappears. So venture capitalists should be investing in women. They should be helping them succeed. It's a win-win.